Is that cycles? It's amazing. Wait, what? What? That says Eevee.
Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Grant and I'm the host of Remington Graphics, and today we're going to be taking a look at Blender's new real-time rendering engine called Eevee. Now Eevee is a super awesome tool with a lot of really awesome features, and if you've used some of my PBR shaders, you'll have this entire situation down in no time because it's fortunately very similar to that, which is really awesome and a complete and total coincidence. But it's really awesome. It gets some really awesome results, and it has just a ton of potential. Now, if you guys want to download and try out Eevee for yourself, you can go to, let's see here, let me actually go ahead and show you guys here. We'll open up Chrome, go to blender.org. We're gonna go to their download page. Scroll all the way down to where it says Bleeding Edge and click Go Grab Your Daily Build. And then down at the bottom here, you'll see these builds are from the Blender 2.8 project, which Eevee is a 2.8 feature. It's not going to be in 2.79 or whatever. But you can go ahead and download whichever one works for your operating system. It'll download in a zip format. Just unpack all the files, put them in a location, and run the blender.exe. And you should have the Eevee engine available to you. And basically what this does is, unlike cycles, it allows you to view these things in real time. Now, you can use real-time rendering sort of in cycles, but it's, as most of you know, it's very noisy, it takes a long time, and this is almost instantaneous. So you can see right now, I'm getting, it's not perfectly optimized yet, I'm getting about 26 FPS. I'm not sure if it has GPU support yet. I enabled my GPU, but judging by the fact that it's running at 25 FPS, I'm guessing it probably doesn't, considering Unreal Engine 4 is much more powerful and can run a lot faster than this. But it is definitely Blender's first step in the right direction, I feel like, with their real-time rendering, and I'm super excited for all the new features that they're going to add when 2.8 does swing around. So this is actually a model and animation I got from Sketchfab, and you will notice it's a little bit laggy, but that's just because Eevee's, again, not quite optimized. But it's really awesome. If you guys want to go check it out, there will be a link down in the description. So thank you to the creator for licensing this under Creative Commons so I could use it in this video. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and do a full breakdown of how this works, all the different features on the node, and kind of how you can get these really awesome results in just literally a snap of a finger. And trust me, if you've used my PBR shader, this will flow to you instantly. All right, for the most part, any PBR shader will help. So let's go ahead and break this down. All right, so I went ahead and stopped the animation just so we can get a full-on view here. And you can see just how precise this thing gets. These are some really high-resolution textures, and this, I believe, is a game asset. And I did throw a subdivision surface modifier on here, which is kind of why this has some glitchiness, but it looks a lot better with that and with the glitchiness. But you can see that Eevee does support some really high-resolution textures, really advanced animations, and it's really kind of cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this works. I'm gonna go ahead and open up a node editor over here. So I open up that, and you can see that we have, as most of you who've used my PBR shader, something very similar to my PBR shader. We have a texture coordinate. We don't have a mapping node in this case because I used UV textures, but in the case that you do need to use generated textures, you can use that. But then we have a bunch of image textures hooked up to a bunch of outputs, and you can see it has the same names, conveniently for the most part, as mine does. For example, base color, metallic, roughness, that's new, normal, you have the clear coat settings down here, and you also have ambient occlusion, which we'll get all into all of that shortly. So I'm actually going to go ahead and delete everything here, and we're going to go through the textures one by one, kind of like with my PBR tutorial, whatever that was. But I'm going to pull this up here. So we have a few things here. We have the body albedo, or albedo, as I was actually told it was pronounced. So I'll try and do that. But anyway, this is the albedo map of the body. We have the ambient occlusion map, which is kind of like, for those of you that don't know, it's common in a lot of game engines and real-time rendering engines because it accounts for the shadows that the real-time rendering engine would typically compensate for, or would typically take care of. This just kind of compensates for it. Emissive maps, which basically are glowing features on the body of this thing. So in this case, it's a bunch of little technology things in this glowing ring right here. And then we actually have two of them. We have a darker one and a brighter one. I'm not really sure what the difference is, but I can tell you that they both work just the same. Then we have the metallic map, which, as previously stated in my PBR shader video, it basically mixes the dielectric and metallic shaders that are built into Eevee. And then it has the normal map, which are the tiny little minute details and bumps and stuff like that, and opacity, which takes care of the little transparency issues and that's super cool. So you can see for the most part this is just white. And also roughness. How could I forget about roughness, which is the glossiness, the tendency to diffuse light, I guess. Then also we have other things. This is other textures, and then we have the same thing for the legs. We have the albedo, the ambient occlusion, the metallic, the normal, and the roughness map for the legs. So we're gonna go through and we're gonna go ahead and reconstruct this material from the bottom up. So you can see by default here, this is kind of what it looks like. It's just this white blob, nothing too terribly fancy. And I'm gonna go ahead and import the textures one by one. So we'll go ahead and add an image texture, and we'll go ahead and add a input texture coordinate, and we'll go ahead and add a mapping node just for the sake of keeping things consistent with my last video. So we'll be using UV textures because this is UV unwrapped already. If you'd like to use generated textures or whatever, go for it. I'm not gonna stop you from doing that. And I'm gonna go ahead and hook the mapping node up to the image texture, hook the image texture up to the base color, because this is going to be our albedo map. And I'll go ahead and click open here and go to where the albedo map is saved. And you can see body albedo right there. So go ahead and open that up. And you can see that, well, it's already mapped onto there and it's already looking pretty snazzy. We'll go ahead and, we'll change that back to texture. We'll shrink this down and we'll go ahead and make another one. And we're going to change this to non-color data because everything from here on out does not need color, except for the emissive color. That's one thing that does. So we'll get back to that shortly. Anyway, we'll go ahead and open the next thing on our list, which in the case of the shader is the metallic map. So you can see it goes base color metallic. And again, non-color data, hook the vector up to here, hook the color up to there, and now we have you can see that it just changed the color of that because it made it metallic. We can go ahead and shrink that down now. Looks like the next thing on our list is specular, but we don't have a specular map. There are some things that will use a specular map, especially if we're working with game design. But in this case, I'm just gonna leave that be empty, and we're gonna go straight for the roughness map. So I'm gonna click open, body roughness, hook the color up to the roughness, and voila, we have our beautiful roughness set up. And if this is in the case that it is a glossiness map instead of a roughness map, all you have to do is come into color, click invert, and just throw that in between there. So it's inverting it, because a glossiness map is an inverted roughness map, and a roughness map is an inverted glossiness map. So now you can see the Buster drone N027 thing right here is super reflective because we did that. But if we delete it and hook it back up, we can see that it becomes more diffused. So we got that down, and we're gonna go ahead and duplicate another one. And now we have emissive color. So because this is a color input, we're gonna change this from non-color data to color. And we're gonna go ahead and open up one of our emissive maps. I'm gonna open up the brighter one, the emissive_H. I'm gonna go ahead and plug that in there. And I'm gonna go ahead and plug the vector in as well, even though we don't really need it. And you can see that added in those tiny little lights. So if I were to mute this layer, you can see those lights turning on and off in our 3D view, and you can see it also added a little band around here, little lights down at the bottom there. You get the point. I want to see, there was something like a red circle though that I missed, and I want to see where that red circle's at. I don't know, maybe it was just part of the map. Oh, is it that thing around the leg? Nope, I don't even know. Well, that will be a mystery forever. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this again, and up next we have transparency, which is something that is not in my PBR shader. What we just need to do here is open a transparency map if there is one. In this case, it's actually called an opacity map. They're the same thing in the end. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug that into the transparency, hook the vector up here. If for whatever reason your model starts to disappear, that's probably because the map you have is inverted, because if I were to go to color, invert, actually, I don't even know. That's weird. I'm not really sure what the transparency map does. But you know what? It's not changing too much. Let's see here. Yeah, it's really not changing too much with this model. I'll definitely experiment with that more. And if I'm wrong, I'll be sure to update you guys and I'll post something in the comments. But until then, it's basically just the transparent and alpha mapped areas of the image. Now we have normal, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up. Oh, yeah, I know why. We have this on color data. Change this to non-color data. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. Yeah, still not seeing much of a change. Yeah, I don't know. It's such a minute thing on this model anyway, I probably wouldn't even notice it. Anyway, let's go ahead and open up the normal map next, because that's the next on our line here. And we have to add a normal map node in between here. And there are a couple different types of normal maps. I just leave it at tangent space for now because it works just as good as anything else. You can try and change it to object space or world space, but I found that this doesn't really work that well. World space doesn't look bad, but tangent space almost always seems to look the best. So I'm going to leave mine at tangent space, and you can see it kind of gets that lens going. Oh wait, maybe that's what this does. Maybe? No? I don't even know. This is frustrating. Anyway, so we can hook that up, and we can go ahead and scooch this back, and make sure this is set to non-color data as well. That way we get the most accurate normal map that we can use, which is another error I made in my PBR shader video. Thankfully, somebody corrected me with that one as well. So now let's go ahead and import the ambient occlusion map. So let's go body AO and hook that up to the ambient occlusion and hook this up to the vector input. And voila! We now have our beautiful PBR drone. Well, I guess not PBR, but it's used PBR maps. And it's already set up in this scene. So another really neat feature about Eevee is that you can use environment maps. And you can kind of see that here. I have this sci-fi tunnel HDRI set up. I just pulled it off of Google Images. Hopefully I'm not going to get like reamed for that. But anyway, I have another one here of a desert. So we can put it in a desert scene. You can see that very subtly changes the lighting on there. Even though there is something here on the ground, it's still reflecting the sand below, which is questionable, but it's really not that noticeable, and I'm not going to complain too much about it. But I'm going to go ahead and actually change this back to sci-fi tunnel because it looks a lot better. And then we also have our lighting. So I actually have a very basic lighting setup here. I have our key light over here. I'm using the HDRI as a sort of softening light, and then I also have this rim light back here, which is taking care of that really bright glow on the drone thingy. So if I wanted to add another light here, let me move the cursor back to the center. Let's say I wanted to add a point light to be kind of like coming down from the ceiling or something. I could do that. You can see that it's very, very vaguely, I guess, reflecting on the top there. You can really see it if I look down on it like this. And you'll notice that this also has this really bright glow. And if you guys aren't familiar with that, that is called bloom. And bloom is one of the post-processing effects that are included in Eevee. Now, I've played around with these a fair bit, and I haven't been able to get motion blur or depth of field to work. Depth of field just kind of, maybe, actually here, let me try something else here. Let me set the focus distance. Yeah, it's still not really working. I'm not really sure about depth of field, unfortunately, because I have it set right there. Here, wait, hang on. Let me just experiment a little bit more here. Maybe if I change the sprite threshold, no, max size, change it down. Yeah, I can't really get depth of field to work very well. But bloom anyway, and also motion blur doesn't seem to work as well, which is a little bit annoying. As you can see there, it doesn't really work. Even if I change the shutter up to like 2, it still doesn't really work. But I'm sure this is just because it's under development. Now, if I come down to bloom here, bloom is this thing causing these really bright glowiness, I guess. And that's something that's pretty common in game engines, and I guess is common in Eevee as well. So we can turn that on. We can change the settings down here. So we can change things like the threshold of the bloom. We can change the knee of the bloom, which I believe is where like how spread the glowiness is. We can change the radius, so it could be a very concise, very, very sharp bloom, or you can have it more spread out. And you can also change the knee down there, but there you can see just how much you can do with it. And then you can also change the intensity to something that's a little bit more reasonable than what I had it at before. But now you can see that just like this, let me turn off this stupid thingy here. There we go. Now you can see that we have our beautiful, beautiful drone, and it took almost 0 time to get this set up, and it's really awesome. And I also did the same thing with the floor here. It's just another PBR texture that I pulled off of Polygon, and it's just Eevee is just really fun to play with, and I can't wait to see what they integrated into. And you should, in theory, I believe they were talking about this in one of their something. I don't remember where I heard this. I wish I did. But they were saying how their goal is to kind of make it so that you can take textures and materials from Cycles and Blender Render and import them straight into Eevee, so that you don't have to completely change them up and redo them once you get in here. So that would be really awesome, and vice versa too. You can take Eevee to Cycles. That way you can do really awesome renders and then also have a real-time interpretation of it. And now another thing that is kind of interesting is when you're working with a very blank scene. So say I went to, I don't have a layer 2 because that's how this works. Let me make a new file here. So this is, by the way, this is gonna look really weird because they updated a lot in 2.78. Like they added these thingies, which are pretty neat. I don't understand the point of them though. But you know, we'll let them be. Anyway, they updated a lot, like the plane's a lot bigger and stuff like that. But one thing I don't understand is why it is so hard to switch from one thing to another in this. So if I like extrude this on the z-axis and I go into cycles render, watch this. Okay, all of a sudden it's sampling it, right? Even though we're not in rendered mode and we don't have rendered mode down here, we can change this to GPU compute. But if I try and like rotate it, it's doing the whole cycles rendering thing, and I'm sure that's just a bug. I'm sure it's not complete yet, but it's just kind of some funky things that aren't quite complete with this yet. Oh, and then also we have the clay render, which is neat, and I feel like clay rendering and Eevee go hand in hand together. And they really this just basically allows for cool matte caps. But anyway, there's this is focusing on Eevee, but there's a lot of really awesome things that Blender 2.78 or 2.8 brings around, and I'm super excited to see how far they develop this and what they can do with it, because Blender might be finally making a comeback in the sort of game engine thing if they implement Eevee into Blender's game engine and all that good stuff. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys are just as excited for Eevee as I am, because it looks really, really awesome. And remember, if you guys found this video helpful or interesting, be sure to drop a like down below so other people know that it is. And if you guys didn't know, I actually started a Patreon a while ago, so if you guys want to go check that out, maybe consider supporting me, it would be really helpful. There's some really cool rewards from things like having your name at the end of the video, which we'll get to in a second because I do have one awesome patron. Things like a procedural for material pack, you can get a really awesome Remington Graphics sticker, you can get help from me at any time, things like that. It's just a lot of really helpful resources. In addition, as I reach certain amounts of funding, I'll be able to make certain videos. For example, I'm planning on making a 4-course full VFX, like film VFX tutorial in Blender for you guys to use, and this is going to be released to everybody, but it's only if I reach a certain amount of funding on Patreon. And as I stated earlier, I'm going to put my patrons' names at the end of every video, so thank you to Tomato Goatee for being my first patron. It's really awesome to see, actually, people supporting me, so I really appreciate that. Anyway, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.